All right, well, I guess nobody else can really fit in here, so I guess we can get started a couple minutes early. So welcome to the talk, UX for Nothing and UI for Free. Nod to Tom, and all you old-timers out there might know what that is from. My name is Richard Everett. I'm a wide-stack digitalist. If you're not familiar with the term, wide-stack digitalist is someone who's familiar at the junior level in multiple areas of digital media, whether it be film and video, front-end web dev, back-end web dev, 3D, growth hacking, any number of things. If it deals with the media and it's been digitized, that's what a wide-stack digitalist works on. So I'm an independent consultant. You can reach me at richardeverts.com. You can find me on my website there, as well as LinkedIn. I do post a lot of my stuff up on LinkedIn, so feel free to check me out there. I'm just going to get right into it because I was told I only have a half an hour and I want to field some questions. So let's go ahead and get started here. So, let's not, because for some reason, hold on. Look at that. They took my quote away. All right, well, you're going to see a lot of my slide here. So I'm going to read this quote to you. I want you to think about this and who said this. I'll give you the answer at the end, so try not to Google it or Bing it or whatever you do here. But for me, UX is about creativity. Creativity is just connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. It seemed obvious to them after a while, and that's because they were able to connect experiences that they've had and synthesize new things. And the reason they were able to do that is that they've had more experiences, or they have thought more about their experiences than other people. Unfortunately, that's too rare a commodity. A lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences. So they don't have enough dots to connect, and they end up with very linear solutions without a broad perspective on the problem. The broader one's understanding of the human experience, the better design we will have. So let that percolate a little bit as we go through this talk here. So this is how most people see user experience. Two things, interface design and visual design. So for instance, if I have a medical device, how does that fit in my hand? That's the interface design. Maybe how do I push a button to start it if it's a wearable device? Or visual design. Somebody looks at a website and they say, well, how does this website function and look? And does it look pretty? Right? These are generally the two things that people see when they look at user experience. But this is how user experience people see the field. So there's a lot of research, and I apologize, I thought I was going to have a projector, but we got to use a little bit smaller TV here. If you can't read some of these are interviews, testing, gathering presentations, personas, designing the products, growth hacking, things like writing, graphic design, interaction, architecture, working with programmers, evangelizing for the company, understanding what the product is and delivering it out to people, and communication to the stakeholders, because let's face it, the electrical and mechanical engineers speak often different language than the marketing team, right? So that's how UX people see what we do. Now this right here is a quote for UI versus UX, because it's a common confusion right there. UI is the saddle, the stirrups, and the reins, and UX is the feeling you get being able to ride the horse and rope your cattle. Now, I was told that this is a little bit of an old metaphor, that I should be updating this a little bit. So what I added here was, if your product is a symphony of technology, then your UX person is the conductor. Okay? Now, that might still be a little old here. If you see this as Amadeus, you haven't seen that, check it out. But I'm going to give you a little bit more modern take on it, and maybe it'll relate to some of the computer people in here. Excuse me, I'm going to show you a scene from a movie. It is, I think, improperly maligned by critics. I thought it was a fabulous movie. And I've done an Oscar-qualified film a couple years ago, and I can tell you just the actual filmmaking part of this movie was phenomenal. I mean, it was absolutely stunning what they were able to accomplish with it. And even if you don't like the content, go rent the film. You'll be happy you did.
I was angry. You were saying things about the Apple II and the way you were treating the team. Lost.
You get a free pass for life. I gotta get back on stage. We've got like 2 minutes of rehearsal time left.
Do you understand how condescending that just was? Well, maybe you don't.
I don't want to see you get dragged off the
I get a free pass for life from you. You give out the pass. You give them to me.
You're gonna have a stroke, little buddy.
What did you do? What did you do? Why has Lisa not heard of me?
Man, how many fourth graders have heard of you?
You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. You can't put a hammer to a nail. I built the circuit board. The graphical interface was stolen from Xerox PARC. Jeff Raskin was the leader of the Mac team before you threw him off his own project. Everything, someone else designed the box. So how come 10 times in a day, I read Steve Jobs as a genius? What do you do?
I play the orchestra. And you're a good musician. You sit right there. You're the best in your role.
I came here to clear the air. Do you know why I came
Can
here?
you just answer that?
I came here because you're going to get killed. Your computer's going to fail. You had a college and university advisory board telling you they need a powerful workstation for $2,000 to $3,000. You press next at $6,500, and that doesn't include the optional $3,000 hard drive, which people will discover isn't optional because the optical disc is too weak to do anything. And the $2,500 laser printer brings the total to $12,000. And in the entire world, you are the only person who cares that it's housed in a perfect cube. You're gonna get killed. And I came here to stand next to you while that happens, because that's what friends do. That's what men do. I don't need your pass. We go back, so don't talk to me like I'm other people. I'm the only one that knows that this guy here is someone you invented. I'm standing by you because that perfect cube, that does nothing, is about to be the single biggest failure in the history of personal computing.
Tell me something else I don't know.
All right. So go rent the film. You'll be happy about it. I let it run a little bit longer because I like the film, and I'm up front. So let's talk a little bit about what these orchestra seats are. What's that? Oh, sorry. I thought it was obvious. That's Steve Jobs. Sorkin wrote the screenplay for it. Who?
It was the Apple story, but I didn't know what.
Yeah. So it's not the guy from the '70s show. It's not his version of Steve Jobs. It's the one by Sorkin. All right. So what are these orchestra seats? Understanding a little bit about user experience. So most of what people in here will be used to, and I'm sorry if you can't read this. If you can't, talk to me afterwards. I'll send you the slide. This is, most web stuff is over here. So your information architecture, visual design, your content creation, your coders are generally in this part of the system. Now, we can use this as an example. So navigation, you can't read that, but if you follow this little line, navigation is the interaction design people with visual design and information architecture, which makes sense. So your interaction design, how are the people, the human beings, actually working with the system? So if you're working on navigation, they're going to be able to need to know, okay, well, are they going to be on a mobile device? Are they going to be, on a laptop? These interaction design people, or is it at a kiosk, at an event or something like that? Then you have your information architecture, who take your underlying information and figure out how to get that over to a user and how to communicate that, right? And how it's designed. Like, how things are stacked in a hierarchy. And then your visual design people, who make things look pretty and make it work. So those three people working together, they build your navigation. Likewise, if you're doing info visualization, you're doing some kind of infographic. Generally, you follow this, and this is the intersection of your visual design people and your information architecture people. So again, people getting the information out, and the visual design people figuring out how to translate that. Now, if you're working in the medical device industry, I use that as an example because I worked at a startup doing that a while ago. You have your mechanical and electrical engineers working with your industrial designers in something like SolidWorks or some kind of 3D system. And then, they're communicating with the other people in the architecture and discussing some of the interaction design. This is how the device is actually built between the people who deal with human-computer interaction and interaction design. So they'll kind of work together. So it's a way of just understanding how all the people work together in a company to accomplish something. So that's a little bit about some of these orchestra seats. But let's talk web UI, because let's face it, that's probably what you're here for, right? All right. So let me give you a little bit here. Rule number 1, don't make me think, right? Don't make me think. And don't overestimate your user's mental models. If you were here for Pete's talk a little bit earlier here, he talks about the MOM test. Well, yeah, it's pretty much that. Don't overestimate the mental models of people. So let me use this as an example. DuckDuckGo search, defeating the evil empire one search at a time. But if you have here, people put www.facebook.com in here, into the search bar. Why didn't you put that into the browser, people? Why are you doing this? It happens all the time. Basic computer literacy is not something you can assume these days. So these are just basics. So don't overestimate your users' mental models. We'll get through in some of the testing there. The average user. Okay, let's talk through some of these. They don't read, they scan. Okay, we talked a little bit about visual hierarchies, being able to display information so that a person's eyes can just move down a system. I'm going to give you an exact example here a little bit later about how that visual hierarchy looks. They don't make optimal choices. This is because there's something called choice overload. So if you're presented with 5, 6, 7 choices, people just quit. They give up. So that's why when you see a page, they often offer a recommendation, like a price list. You ever see, like, you have a subscriptions and you'll have 4 subscriptions, and usually they have a recommended one? Well, that's because that's the one that gets optimized and used the most. It really does, because you're making the choice for them. People say they want choice, but they really don't. Okay? Not when it comes to this kind of stuff. They're not going to take time to figure out how things work. So there's a great book out there by a guy named Don Norman who wrote The Design of Everyday Things. I would highly recommend it. It was written in the 80s and is just as relevant today as it was back then. Okay? But one of the things he discusses in there is about utilizing design that's already in the world. So, for instance, here I'm going to use an example from carpentry. Righty-tighty, right? Lefty-loosey. Righty-tighty when you're putting in a screw, lefty-loosey, right? A lot of people know that. Righty-tighty on, lefty-loosey off. But how does that work in the world? Well, which way do you screw in a light bulb? Righty-tighty on, lefty-loosey off, right? If you have an oven that's designed properly, okay, designed properly in North America, for a North American audience, when you turn on the oven, righty-tighty is going to turn it on. Lefty-loosey is going to turn it off, right? Now, if you're using a Nest thermostat, which way turns it up and on? Clockwise, lefty-loosey off. And if you're doing it on the web, so if you have a dial to increase something, which way does it turn? If it's a dial, it's going to turn to the right. On, web usability. Off is left, right? That's North America. The important thing is using our innate cognitive bias that have been put into us culturally and using them in your products. And you can find examples of those. Go read Design of Everyday Things. He has a lot more examples about how to use design that already exists. And don't try to reinvent the wheel. And people don't always come through the home page. I don't use Facebook anymore. That's the other evil empire. But people send me stuff still. Excuse me. People send me stuff. So I gotta view videos and cat videos and whatever. People gotta send me sometimes. And so they'll send me a link, but I'm not logged in anymore. But I still get to see the video. But I'm not coming in through their homepage. I'm viewing their content on a content-specific page. So that's something also to remember as you're going through. Just some quick facts here. The average user is going to fail a third of the time when trying to complete your task. They're going to choose sites that have proven useful in the past. The average person in America will visit 5 to 7 sites. That's it, and just keep going to them over and over. Think about what you have bookmarked. Think about what you have as your morning ritual or your afternoon ritual. It's generally 5 to 7 sites that you cycle through. Remember that. It's tough to break into that 5 to 7. They're going to spend about 1:49 before they abandon your site. I think it's a little bit less now. This might be an older statistic, but it's about 1:49. They're going to visit only a couple of sites, and they only have a 12% possibility of coming back to your site. Now, there's something to remember there. If you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business, that means that your metric that you should be looking at is active users. You're not interested in total users. It's active users. How many people are coming back and using that? Because your active users are going to be paying you. They're going to be doing a lot of stuff with you. All right? So do what you can to get them back. Now, that was talking about some of the older people, the mental models, the mom test, and some of those other things. Let me show you what's happening with the next generation, because this kind of blew my mind when I first saw it. All right. I mean, there's just something about seeing cute little babies. Come on now, people. You guys can't be that cold, right? You know, it was just nice to see. So, but look at that. It's interesting to see the next generation coming up. Now, there's a difference here, and I want you to focus on so you can think about some of the things that are happening in AR and VR. See, in our formative years, and I'm trying to average the ages here. I know we got a broad range of ages. But when we grew up, generally we had personal computers in the home. We were some of the first people to use graphical interfaces. You know, a lot of us had to code at the command line when we were dealing with DOS or something like that, but we knew how to use that. And then, you know, we moved into some more graphical interfaces with Windows and some of the other things that you end up having. But we're always used to those kind of interfaces. Or Nintendo, you're using a controller, you know, or PlayStation. Well, now these kids that are growing up, their formative years, they're using their body as an interface. The body is the interface. Something to remember and think about as we go on. I've spoken to a couple of people at Microsoft where they're doing their HoloLens, the Google Magic Leap people, and they're talking about the challenges of building user interfaces using augmented reality. And if you want to know more about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it. But just something to think about for the next generation. But for now, some quick UI conversion tips because I promised them. So I deliver what I say here. So let's look at this one right here. Peter was talking about it earlier, but this is what we call a heat map. If you're not familiar with it, a heat map is a little thing attached to your computer monitor. It watches your eyes, and as your eyes scan across the screen, it will heat up the areas that you look at more often. Okay? So this is a heat map of how people view web pages. It is what we call the F pattern. F pattern. You can see the F right there. Okay? It is the most common pattern. That's how people look at websites when we look at left to right languages. Okay? The one thing I want you to notice, there's two things actually I want you to notice about this F pattern. Okay? Your key design stuff is going to be up here, your main action items, things that you want people to be able to do. Websites exist for one reason, which is to solve problems for people. Once you understand that, you can understand about creating an action item for people to be able to use. We're going to talk a little bit about that in another example. So there's two things. Right here, this kind of slides over. It's almost an E. Almost an E, kind of like our eyes trail there. You'll see that in a later example. And this right here, see this free training voucher they put in the right-hand column and how it has a little teeny bit? It's called ad blindness. It's because we were so used to seeing things on Google and the ads, we just ignore them. People just ignore them. If you have a right-hand column on a page, if you're doing like a Bootstrap, if anybody does Bootstrap, you know you have 9 columns, maybe 3 columns for your sidebar. Just forget everything in your 3 columns because nobody's going to look at it. Okay? You're just wasting your time. Unless you put in some motion. Just a little bit of motion. One piece of motion. Not 3 things competing against each other, but a little bit of motion might get their attention. Now, let's take a look at this one here. This is something you would get off of any kind of traditional templating system. So you have your good-looking person. I know it's not Channing Tatum for any ladies in here. I apologize, but it is a handyman sitting in here. You know, and you have your slideshow, right? Because everybody wants the slideshow. And then you have your 3 things here, your 3 different sub pieces, 3 different columns, a 3-column setup. Very traditional. Don't do this. It is horrible. Okay, I promise you, absolutely horrible. And let me tell you why. Number 1, slideshows, forget them. Nobody uses them. I don't know why you waste your time. Okay, I was just recently helping a company redesign their website. I kid you not, we wasted 3 weeks deciding what was going to be on the 4th and 5th slide. Nobody's going to see that. Why? Why argue about it? Maybe you get nice, like if you're doing like a product sizzle thing, like a Nike shoe. You know, and you're going to sell that shoe because that's what it is, you can get by with making, you know, a big picture because that is the product and it's hot, you know. But other than that, 2nd, 3rd, 4th slides, don't worry about them. Next piece here. This right here has no visual hierarchy. I look at this and it makes me say, oh my God, I got to read. I got to figure out what this is. There's no differentiation. There's nothing here. It's just nobody clicks on them. When I was I worked at Columbia University for a while building a website for them, and I can tell you, we had these things called spotlights at the bottom, which were like little news articles, you know, because every department, you know, they got to be on the front page, right? So we would cycle out all these news articles, and we looked at the analytics. nobody was clicking on. We're seeing click-through rates of 0.2%. Okay, that's a lot of effort for 0.2%. Okay, so people aren't, unless you got to give them some kind of direction, give them a push, right? So that's why, remember when I talked about the recommended pricing, and they have one that kind of stands out, it's got a little bit of different colors, maybe it's a little bit larger. Give them that direction. You're going to find a lot of optimization conversions there. This right here, this is not a yield sign. Okay, this is a red button. Okay. Now, I know there's a lot of studies out there. Everybody has their opinions. I will tell you, basic color theory, red in North America is a color of excitement, a color of energy, right? And I mean, the red Ferrari at middle age is like a cliche, a cultural cliche, right? Well, it's similar like this. So reds generally convert at a rate of about 5 to 10% higher than other buttons. Now, this is only when it's in a vacuum. So if your whole site is red and you have a red button, no, that's not going to work. Okay, but maybe in an email. If you're sending out an email and you want somebody to do something, you have your one button, your one action item. Okay, and if it's a red button, you should see slightly higher conversions. Also on the buttons, just a little thing, make your button actually say what it does. Don't say, click here. Say, donate now. Or something, something like that. Like, what's this button going to do? Be specific. What's that?
Sign up.
That's right. Sign up now. So let's look at a case study. So this is my own project I'm working on. It's called Happen App. It's an event management app. It is Facebook events meets Candy Crush, and we're also putting it on the Star Trek holodeck. So we're working with a little augmented reality. But I want to show you this is a wireframe progression and how it ties in. So. Forget all this stuff up here, which is the research and the user tests and all that stuff that's gone on in here, okay? This is just the wireframe. I want to show you the process. So look at this. You got, this is a bootstrap grid. We put this into a basic wireframe. There are tons of free ones out there. You don't have to use what I used, which was Balsamiq. You can use mockups. This was our copy for the event-driven life. We had a very specific sign-up, and this is what we tested, and we tested with a basic green, okay? And then one of the things that we did is, we user tested all the different pieces of this with people. We also tested the copy. We used a system called Unbounce, where you can create a landing page. And one of the things that we did is we created a landing page with two different, everything was the same. We were trying to get email conversion, so sign up now. And the only thing we did was we changed the copy. And we saw which one would give you a higher conversion. That'll tell you which one of your pieces of copy works better. Right? So we moved through this process. We moved from this to this. We found, hey, this tested higher, so we put it in, right? And then this is a main action item. There is only one action item. It's just like Airbnb, right? There's really only one main action item. Of course, you got your nav bar and stuff, but this is the main thing. And then we moved to blue. Testing, testing, testing. Then we went over here. Guess what color we moved to? A little bit of a red. Threw a little red in there, right? Got your main action item. This wasn't even the final. We're still testing and moving through this process, but it's getting closer. Nice, happy, fun people, smiling people. Hey, it's awesome. And grid copy, main action item right there. Now, like I said, this is just a case study of wireframing and going through the process. So, UX is at your company, right? You guys are dealing with UX? Yeah. So, generally, here's what happens. Your suits or executives are going to decide on your business goals. They're going to convert that to a product strategy based on how they think your customers and your people actually work. They're going to say, well, I think they're going to do this and this. And you have people sitting around a room discussing what they think everybody's going to do. And then they bring in the web team and say, okay, I want everything on the home page. Put my people at the top or make them bigger. Hide the contact info because we don't want anybody to actually call us and talk to us. And get it to market as soon as you can. And oh, by the way, don't hire anybody extra. I want it cheap. Okay? That's usually how people look at user experience and usability, right? I'm going to leave this up there for you. Maybe you can read this if you can't. Your user requirements include 400 features. Well, do you realize that no human would be able to use a product with that level of complexity? Good point. I better add easy to use to the list. Right? So let me give you a little bit of an idea, something called Lean UX, which you can throw in there. So what are some of the tools that you need? Rule number one, step away from your computer, people. Put the computers down, okay? I want you to, these things is what you're going to need. This is a pencil, not a pen, a pencil. You can find them still in the stores. They're in the aisles with all the other utilities. So stickies, they're great as well. Graph paper, oh my gosh, it's like crafts class again. You have a big whiteboard. Not necessary, but really awesome. Nice Expo markers, and this I call creativity. Now remember we talked about creativity earlier, but I do want to give you a little bit of an example. There's a great show called Brain Games. It's on National Geographic. It's actually on Netflix now. Go check it out. Fabulous show about how people's minds work. But in one of them, they show these examples of, they did a test, and they went up to these adults and showed them an abstract image. They said, hey, I'm going to use this as an example. What is this to you? Now, I know this is an abstract. Try to imagine. And they asked the adults what it was. And they gave them 5 seconds. And here's what the adults said. They said, okay, this is something I can make a phone call with. I can listen to music. I can browse the web. Boom, time's up. Average adult is going to give you between 2 to 3 answers in those 5 seconds. Now, they repeated the test, but this time with little kids. And you know what? Here's what they found. Okay, they told the little kids, all right, go. Oh, this is a microphone. This is my antenna that I can talk to the moon with. This is here to hold my pizza. And like, they went through all these examples, and the average child was 5 to 7 in 5 seconds. So what does that tell us? Well, we should probably take Alice's advice from Alice in Wonderland and try to dream about 6 impossible things before breakfast, okay? If you want to be good at this kind of stuff and be creative, you have to think like a kid. Again, get out of the box. Don't be so functional, right? Get out of the box. And with that, you can do a lot of cool things. So this right here, this is a great example. I did this with Happen App. When you have a ton of information and you need to sort it out, okay? So you're starting with a product and you don't know what to do. So what I did, and this is not the exact one, but you take your stickies and you just write down a feature. And you just write them down, write them down, write them down, write them down. There are no bad ideas. Okay, maybe there are, but you don't tell people that. You just let them write everything down, write everything down, write everything down. And before you know it, your whole wall is covered with stickies, or this thing's covered with stickies. And then what do? That's when you start sorting things out. So for me, or for these guys, they did groups, location and culture, spontaneity, goals. That's what this group was doing. But I broke mine down into like events, registration, tickets, and then broke them down, and then broke them into subcategories. And just started organizing things out. And the reason that you can do that is because they're sticky, so you can move them and stick them, right? And you can move all this stuff around. This is called affinity diagramming. And some of the great things about this is that if you look at this, if you're a programmer, guess what? Your sprints are kind of laid out a little bit if you're using Agile, right? It's kind of laid out. You kind of understand, okay, I got to build this, this, and this. And a lot of people can work together from different departments and build this and then get an understanding of what the product will be. It's a great way to sort a ton of information quickly. Okay? I would do that at the beginning of large projects. These are things called personas. So these are not real people, okay, but they're based upon your customers as close as you can. And they have goals, they have actions. He wants a doohickey to help me study more efficiently. I didn't say this was a great persona, but it's good. And then you give them a little bit of a background. And this right here is a great way to be able to design from. You can hand this to all of the people, and they can say, okay, well, let's look at Jack. And they can use that as a frame of reference. Well, he's trying to find a credible doohickey, so we might want to use some kind of social proof. If you don't know what that is, it's like a quote from somebody that makes you look makes your product look important. It's like why companies put like New York Times and Salesforce and all these logos on the front of their website to show you about how important they are. Okay, an empathy map. So this is for different kinds of products. When they come to a specific page, what do they hear, think, see, do? What are their pain and gain points? I like to do something called body storming. If you're not familiar with body storming, let's say you design an app that is how to pick up people at a bar. I don't know. Okay, so you go to a bar. So where do you test this? Do you test it in your office here, hanging out with everybody? No. Go to the bar. Go hang out at a bar, take your phone with you, because then you're going to say, okay, man, it's really loud here. Crap. Well, I guess we can't use those audio signals in our application to signal to people when they get a new message, because that's not going to work, right? Because they can't hear. Oh man, I can't see that person all the way down at the end of the bar. Like I'm going to have to figure out a way to get people to meet differently. And so when you get your body storm, you take your body and put it into the actual environment that it's going to be used, you're more likely to get better user data and understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. Here's practically what ends up happening. So if you're building your user interfaces, you'll do a sketch, you create some low fidelity wireframes. They'll probably be in, they could be on paper. I designed my first ones on paper. Test, 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 get better designs, test, 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 better designs. It's a lot easier to change a wireframe than it is a PSD document, Photoshop document, right? So get as much as you can out at the beginning as you're going through and testing, right? And this is exactly that. So if you go from sketch, paper, pencils, remember? You can mess up and have fun, throw them away. Wireframes, prototypes, and designs. And this is how quickly you can move through here as you concept and refine your idea. That's just what that's showing. It's a nice linear graph. Really doesn't say much other than that. This is about fidelity of your system. I know you're never going to be able to read this, but what essentially this is you go from sketching to image maps to more interactive prototypes. You'll notice something about that. The things that you're testing at the beginning are things like, where would you go if you needed to find information on the doohickey? And you watch where they click. Did they click on, in the nav bar? Did they click on an action item you set up, something in the sidebar? And if you can check that without having to create any interaction, right? Because you can just see where their first thoughts are, right? Because that'll save you some time instead of having to build out an entire interactive prototype only to see that they're never actually going to click on that drop-down menu. You know what I mean? So you start with little interactivity in your first versions. So no colors. Oh my gosh, how many times have I been in an interview, or doing like a focus group, and somebody says, "I don't like the color of that button," and that's all they focus on for the whole time. The color of the buttons. Okay. Oh, can you find the information? I don't like that color. Okay. That's why everything's in black and white at the beginning. All right, or shades of gray. Right. Now they have all the things are static. And you generally use lorem ipsum because you're not testing out the copy at that point, right? And then as you go through, then you add styles when you're testing colors, interactivity, and real content, okay? So just remember that. Start with this stuff first to get your first testing and ideas. All right, I am running low on time. So a couple of extra resources to all you Catan fans out there. It's a little throw for you. Lean UX. By Jeff. I always think that says goth elf. I don't know, maybe that's just what I have in my brain, but you can go check that out. It's a great book, a short book, because it's about being lean. It's a great system there. Don't Make Me Think by a guy named Steve Krug, who it's web usability. If you want to do web usability, it is like the first book you should read. It really is. Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. Okay, I already talked about that. Good UI. I don't make any money from this, but I'm going to promote them anyway because they have saved me so much time. What they do is they take data sets of visits, anywhere between maybe 5,000 and 20,000 visits, and they will do a test like email conversion, cart abandonment, different kinds of signups, onboarding. And they'll look at 6 or 7 variations and give you the statistics that you need. Yes, you're going to have to pay for it. Okay, you can get some free stuff on there, but I promise you it's worth every penny. I can't begin. This is what I used when I was at the finance company to say, oh, well, I know all of you geniuses around the table think that people are going to do this, this, and this, but this data, this real-world data, shows me that they're really not. They're going to do this, this, and this. People don't want to fight opinions, right? If you have data, though, and you can go to them with factual data, it depersonalizes it. They're not wrong. The data's right? And that's important to be able to do. A lot of it's about human relations and figuring out how to do that. Good UI is a great resource. It's worth every penny. And then, of course, the Nielsen Norman Group. Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen got together, two of the titans. They have awesome certifications that you can do, classes in DC. Maybe you can convince your boss to send you to Vegas for one of them. Okay? And lastly, one last thing. Feel free to contact me if you do have UX at your company, 1 to 4 days. If you're interested in funding or working on my app, I'm always looking for talented people. Or you have something great that you want help on. I'd love to help. I love working on cool stuff. Okay? Find me at Richard Everett, so you come talk to me. And one last thing, the quote, of course, at the beginning about creativity and finding that was by Steve Jobs. So thank you very much.